Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. And my name is Frank Yu. I'm the Principal Application Experience Architect with Kemp, and this is going to be an interesting conversation. So we have this great content to present to you, and just to bear in mind as we go through this presentation and you listen and see everything, we have a Q&A available at the end of the session, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section in the Bright Talk system, and we'll certainly look at these and answer them at the end of the session, or if appropriate, during the session. But we look forward to this, and let me go ahead and get us started. So this presentation, don't use the F word. Up your game with Kemp Load Balancing. And I think everybody knows where we're going with this, and you're going to see very obviously and very quickly kind of what we're going to. What we want to do is try to give you an overview and an understanding, at least from our perspective, of what the system looks like, what the environment looks like, landscape looks like, and what we want to do. So a quick agenda. We're going to give a real quick overview of load balancing technology because we believe it's important for you to understand, and let's make sure we're all on the same page on the core principles of what we mean when we say load balancing. And then we'll get into what is the F word, and then is F5. Obviously, we're kind of giving the answer away here. Is F5 right for you? Then talk about the Kemp difference and what Kemp technologies, what we do at Kemp, and then summarize it all together. So this should be a good conversation. Hopefully there's some good information, and let's get into this. And by the way, as I go through this presentation, also in terms of housekeeping, if you go to the resources tab, there are a lot of links and other pieces there that are made available to you that you can access during the presentation for some of these things that I mentioned. So number one, what is load balancing? Hopefully everybody has kind of an idea what load balancing is. The name kind of implies what it is. We balance loads. It's a little more than that. And really what we want to talk about is this thing, application delivery controller, this ADC concept, and load balancers. And load balancer technology has been around for a long time. Load balancers were introduced around 1997 ballpark time frame as a vendor released product. That was Cisco Local Director. So it's been around for a while. We have a lot of great functionality built into load balancing technology over that time. And we introduced the term, or really and truly Gartner introduced the term, the analyst firm, ADC, Application Delivery Controller, around 2004. And the ADC is basically a load balancer that does a lot more things. It's what I like to call a fancy load balancer, a load balancer with extra features, because they decided that load balancers were doing more than load balancing, and they need to give a new term. So now we include functions like web application firewall, authentication, network firewall, DDoS mitigation. There's lots of interesting cases, network address translation, that the load balancers can handle in today's environment with some of these fancy features. But ultimately, what we're looking at is that most of the use cases that we require or are looking for this concept of an ADC, really and truly, they're looking for the load balancing capabilities. The load balancing capability is so powerful, so strong, is so essential that this is what people want. This is what customers want for their projects and their business use cases, because load balancing, as you can see here, is really a key technology for this concept of digital transformation. We need digital transformation, or we're trying to achieve digital transformation, and we can spend a whole nother hour trying to define digital transformation. But let's talk about, utilizing technology to make our business more agile, more flexible, more usable. And this digital transformation is important for the businesses, for the environments. And as we look for the different environments, load balancing technology is essential. And it's essential because the load balancing fundamentals. What is load balancing? Number one is this server load balancing, this SLB. it's acting as a reverse proxy, managing pools of application servers, distributing traffic across these groups of servers, and providing the availability for those servers by using health checks and algorithms to determine whether the server is available or not and to send traffic to it. And this can be on premise, this can be virtual, this can also be in a cloud environment. And then we also have global server load balancing, which is different technology, but it has a similar concept or purpose of doing DNS manipulation to provide site availability for disaster recovery, active sites, geolocation. So this global server load balancing and server load balancing are the two main components that businesses tend to look for when they want load balancing technology. And this is true, especially in today's world, as we shift more and more to these concepts of cloud and virtualization. We require load balancing because the reason we're shifting to cloud and virtualization is because we want that agility and elasticity. So we want that scalability, elasticity, being able to breathe, to add resources and remove resources quickly and easily. We want that availability so that that application is always accessible by our end users, whether they be customers or employees. And of course, we want that agility, the ability to change things quickly and easily in our environments, because businesses are changing and we need to stay competitive and we need to keep upgrading and fixing things to leapfrog ahead of or catch up to our competitors or colleagues. So load balancing is a critical technology even in today's world, even though it's been around for a long time. So load balancing is important. We want it. How do we get there, and what is out there? So let's look at, what is this F word? What is the F word and what does it mean? And really, and again, we gave it away at the beginning. The F word is F5 networks. F5 networks is a legacy application delivery controller vendor, ADC vendor. They've been around for quite a long time, and they're based in Seattle, Washington, and they have products such as Big IP. They have Nginx. They have something called WebSafe. And these are different products doing different things for different environments. And what we're going to focus on, we're going to focus on this series of products for the I series, which is the hardware appliances. We also have Viprion, which is the chassis-based hardware that F5 produces. And they also have something called VE, Virtual Edition, which is the software version of the product that we're going to be talking about. And this all is pretty much under this umbrella that we call Big IP. So the Big IP product is the focus of F5 Networks, has been for a long time. They've added on these other pieces such as Nginx and WebSafe recently in the past year or two. But this Big IP is really what F5 is about and what we want to talk about. So what is this Big IP? Let's take a look under the hood. Let's look at what Big IP and this thing called TMOS. You might hear from some people this thing called TMOS also for F5. Number one, Big IP. It's the software-based code and also the name for the products that is associated with for all of their ADC products. So we have Big IP, which is the code that consists of multiple products and modules that have different capabilities. And they are all activated through various license keys that you purchase from F5. And then you also have TMOS, Traffic Management Operating System. This is the underlying engine for this Big IP software. It is customized Linux code, and it is designed to have specific support for customized hardware as well. F5 Networks designs their own FPGAs. They also use specialized hardware such as ternary cam, TCAM. In the network industry, this is something very common or popular to use for high-end layer 3 switching and routing is TCAM, this ternary cam, content addressable memory. And it also includes other features such as control plane management through iControl and other pieces. But Big IP and TMOS are really the core of the engine of the F5 product in conjunction with the hardware that it is taking advantage of. And when we talk about these products and modules, what is in there and what is it doing for you? So we have all these different modules, and we have these core modules that F5 provides or has the ability to use within the Big IP product. We have LTM, which is Big IP Local Traffic Manager. This is your server load balancing functionality. We have DNS, or Big IP DNS, which is probably a lot more well known as GTM, Global Traffic Manager. It was renamed DNS several years ago, but it's really known as GTM, Global Traffic Manager. And this is your global server load balancing functionality. That disaster recovery, active, and it can also act as a cache proxy resolving DNS server. The third piece is AFM, Advanced Firewall Manager. This is your traditional / next generation network firewall. Layer 3, layer 4 capabilities. It has some added intelligence to do things like DNS security protection and other pieces, but it is pretty much a traditional network firewall, layer 3 and layer 4 network firewall. The next component is APM, Access Policy Manager. This does edge authentication. So Kerberos authentication, single sign-on, RSA token or two-factor token authentication. If you're doing LDAP authentication, all these things are built into the APM module. And then the last piece that we'll talk about here is ASM, Big IP Application Security Manager. This is your web application firewall, doing HTTP, HTTPS inspection and policy enforcement. So there's a lot to this Big IP product, and it does a lot of things beyond the core load balancing functionality of the server load balancing and global server load balancing. By the way, I'm not even including other things that are specific for other verticals, such as their service provider carrier. They have something called CGNAT, which is the Big IP carrier grade NAT, and even something called Big IP Policy Enforcement Manager, PIM, which is designed for, if you know service provider lingo, the SGI network and the LTE environments. So a lot of stuff put into this Big IP code, and it shows. It's big. It is slightly unwieldy, but it is a large package of code all given at once, and this is how they deliver their solution. The next piece we want to touch on is iRules. It's data plane programmability. It's the ability to do things to manipulate by programming the content and what it sees and what it does for the content in flight. And iRules is very common in F5 systems. The estimate from F5 is that 80% of F5 systems has iRules configured. This is not because they are nice to have, but because they need to have the iRules configured to get the functionality that they want out of the F5 product. The original iRules were TCL or TCL based, and they've upgraded iRules recently to be Node.js based. So this is called iRules LX. You can see here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, this is a shot of the iRules editor to program iRules that is available for the TCL-based iRules. And then on the right hand, we have the Node.js version of the editor. And you can see here, really and truly, this is a full-blown programming language, and you do need a programmer to really understand and support it with all the specialized variables and other pieces. You do need someone that has a good, solid understanding of programming and scripting to be able to support iRules for the F5 systems. So let's talk about, because of these things that we talked about and understanding now a little more about the F5 Big IP product, why is F5 possibly not the right solution for your organization or for your project? Reason number one, complexity. As I mentioned, these different products, the LTM, the DNS/GTM, the ASM, AFM, APM, they're still part of the code whether you're using them or not. Whether you've turned on the license key or not, they're still in the code. And there is interaction between these modules in terms of connection tables, how things get passed from one module to another if you are utilizing them. And it is complicated. It is hard to understand how the system is actually working in your environment with all these modules interacting with that traffic. The second piece is that it's really hard to configure and manage. Because you have all these modules and the way you have to configure and design the system in terms of configuration and the user interface, it is not easy to do. There are a lot of menu options and different paths that you have to take to do different things. And of course, you have to use iRules for a lot of components. And this makes it hard where it can take literally days or weeks to configure and manage a system to get it done properly. It is hard to figure out. It takes expertise. It takes training to learn how to use the F5 system. And again, you really need some sort of resident expert to give you that capability to manage these systems on a day-to-day basis. Number two, inconsistency with hardware and software. I mentioned that they use proprietary silicon. They design their own FPGAs. They use TCAM, ternary CAM, which is not a common off-the-shelf type of hardware. And the TMOS operating system is designed to be optimized to use that hardware. So if you buy the hardware appliances, the Big IP appliance, the Viprion chassis, it leverages that hardware and you get the features and performance that you need. But what about when you convert to these virtual environments? So you have your private software-defined data center. You go to public cloud, like Amazon, AWS, or Azure. What happens to that TMOS functionality if the hardware is not there in those environments? There's something missing under the hood. And you're not going to get the same performance, and you might not be getting the same functionality because there are components that are missing as you move to the software environment versus the proprietary hardware environment. This is something that you need to be careful for. This is something that needs to be addressed as you work with your F5 engineers and teams to understand how those pieces interact and what you gain or lose by going to hardware or non-hardware versions of the software. Reason number three, iRules. iRules is great and it's awful. I'll jump to the end of this little list here. Customers love the flexibility of iRules because you can get iRules to do anything that you want to do. Good example is that one time I knew an F5 engineer and he configured the Big IP load balancer to be a DHCP server using iRules. Why? I'm not sure, but he could. It was possible. But because of that, customers hate the flexibility because now you can get it to do anything when you want, but it's really complicated to do it. You do need that full-time programmer to be able to manage and support your iRules. If you're a small organization, you might only have one person that might become your iRules expert, your programmer. in your operations team or in your network team. And now you have a concern if that person leaves the business or if they go off and do something else. Or you might be relying on some professional services from your partner or from F5, and there you have to keep on going back to the till to pay for and get the services to support your iRules infrastructure. Another not so hidden secret is that F5 defers development to iRules. For the longest time, for example, a common load balancer feature, the HTTP redirect, the 302, send it to a different site, had to be done in iRules. Another good example is I mentioned that carrier grade NAT, that CG NAT solution that F5 has as a product. Before it was a product, it was a complex list of iRules that engineers had created because they needed that functionality. And F5 basically said, this is how you do the carrier grade NAT. Use this big complex list of iRules until the point where they finally had to say, we are going to support this and provide it as a product. So you'll see a lot of features and functions that will be deferred because they know that there's a way to do it in iRules. If you're looking to do migrations from iRules to other solutions, you'll find that a majority of those iRules do not have to be customized to program functions. They are built into the functions within, for example, the Kemp Load Balancers. Number 4, they have defocused on the core load balancing / ADC functionality. This load balancing core competency of server load balancing and global server load balancing is less important, at least it looks like it's less important from what we can tell for F5. If you look at their messaging, their advertisements, their pitches, their briefing, their website, it's all about security. Security with DDoS mitigation, distributed denial of service attacks, through their Silverline Cloud platform or their DDoS Hybrid Defender or DHD, which is their modified big IP platform for DDoS mitigation. Application security. They acquired Shape Security last year for $1 billion, which does inline web fraud protection with a product called WebSafe. Or network security, where they're doing things like the carrier grade network firewall through their AFM Advanced Firewall Manager solution. So a lot of it is about other functionality beyond the core load balancing. Reason number 5. F5 is expensive. Whether you like it or not, there is a premium that you're paying for because of all these other modules and functions that they have built into the product. Whether you license them or not, there is a premium that is being applied to the cost of the F5 solution. So here I'm doing a comparison of 2 hardware models with Kemp and F5, Kemp's LMX15 and F5's i2800. You can see the numbers. I won't go through them. And you can see the estimated list priced. This is the MSRP from what we can find on websites and various sources. And we can see that the F5 product is $27,900 US, and the Kemp is $9,800 US estimated list price. So we are getting a 50% increased performance, 15 gigs throughput versus 10. And it's 35% of the price. So almost 1/3 of the price, or a 2/3 discount, versus the F5 solution for a similar functionality. And this is probably the more conservative comparison. Comparisons can go as high as 7 to 8 times the cost for an F5 solution versus a comparable Kemp solution, for example. And this is true across the board with other vendors. I've worked for other load balancing vendors, and it is not maybe not this wide of a discrepancy, but F5 tends to be the most expensive solution on the market. We have on this web link, and if you go to the resources, there's a link to a comparison page at the Kemp website, for example, that you can do your own comparisons of prices and performance capabilities of F5 and Kemp load balancers. Reason number 6, we estimate that 90% of all projects that use an ADC, an application delivery controller, which in my mind, I simplistically referred to that as a fancy load balancer. We really only need a load balancer. I want a screwdriver. I want my server load balancing. I want my global server load balancing for application availability, scalability, and my disaster recovery. What I end up getting is something that does a lot more. How many times have I bought one of these multi-tools, but end up only using one or two of the tools on that multi-tool? Get what you need, and it's going to be better designed for that need, and it's going to be much less expensive and easier to use for that need. If all you want is a load balancer, focus on finding something that acts as a load balancer. Reason number 7, support and customer satisfaction. You can see Gartner Peer Insights, which is a customer review system that is fully validated through Gartner, the analyst firm. F5 is not the top-rated load balancer. It is Kemp. Kemp has over a total of 200 customer reviews and a rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars. There's a reason why Kemp is the top rated, and it's really that two-part reason. One, customer satisfaction. You can see here the quote in that window on the left. Kemp Loadmaster, the name of the balancing product from Kemp, is a strong product, easy to use, and great support. So the customer is happy with the solution in terms of functionality, how it is to manage, and Kemp does have world-class global support for the solution, where you get access to top-rated engineers in the networking industry, IT industry, not just for load balancing technology. So there's a reason why other vendors get better ratings than F5. And this is not just through Gartner Peer Insights. This is through other review sites like Capterra and other locations. F5 is not necessarily the best solution according to the customers and the reviews coming in. So now let's think about why Kemp. Why do we want to think about and look at a Kemp solution? Why is Kemp telling us these things about F5, and what do we have to offer? Kemp's mission statement is Kemp powers the always-on application experience that enterprises and service providers need to succeed. Always-on application experience. We always want to make sure applications are available, and we always want to optimize that application experience, that AX, as we call it, application experience, for your business needs. So this really comes to providing some core components and capabilities. Number 1, we want to have simple, easy to use products and solutions. We want to simplify through an intuitive user interface the ability to configure and deploy load balancing technology. We wanted to make it so that it takes hours, not days or weeks or even months, to understand, architect, and configure load balancing solutions. We want to provide things like templates to make it easy for you to configure your application for your load balancing environments. We want to give you the most flexible licensing options. We want to give you the ability to buy or consume the load balancing technology how you need it and how it makes sense, whether it's through perpetual licenses or subscription-based licenses or things like metered licensing or pooled licensing. We want to make sure that is available to you and also in all environments, whether it's private data center, cloud, etc. 3, we want to give you that unmatched value and cost savings. We want to give you top-notch performance for the value that you're spending compared to the competitors, compared to the other offerings. So we want to make sure you get the features and capability and performance and maximize your budget and your cost analysis for that TCO compared to companies like F5. And last, we really have this world-class technical support organization, something that we really rely on, where we have this customer support organization that is global and is unmatched in terms of its support. They have a 99% customer satisfaction rating in terms of feedback from the customers that use them. And they are really designed to support the load balancing technology from the very beginning, the time that you open a call. You contact them and you're going to get a world-class engineer at the beginning, and they're going to help you with load balancing and really and truly, if necessary, the corollary networking, architecture, application needs that for your environment. We have seamless iRules migration and application templates. So if you are migrating from an F5 solution, again, 80% of our customers or customers using F5 Big IP are using iRules. Chances are you need to migrate your iRules to a different solution. We have professional services that are extremely educated in terms of understanding iRules configuration and the coding and migrating it to a Kemp configuration. And again, the great thing is, like I said earlier, most of these iRules that you're converting do not need to be custom configurations necessarily within a Kemp solution. They are part of the built-in product because we have built the product to provide that capability instead of leaning on the customized functionality to provide that. And application templates. These are a key supported component for the Kemp solution, where all the major applications that you might be using, whether it's Exchange or Citrix Storefront or Oracle or Illusion Student Information Systems, whatever the case may be, we have application templates available that are fully supported that take the expertise of understanding the application for the load balancing configuration and puts it into this template. So you can load the application template, and then it's just a matter of easily configuring the load balancer for that application because it already knows and understands how that application works. It makes the configuration and management of the load balancer easier. That's a very key aspect of what Kemp is trying to do, is make this technology easy for you to use, consume, and operate. We have the industry's most flexible load balancing options. So we have virtual load balancers that run on common hypervisors, all the standard hypervisors, whether it's VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, Zen, it's available on those platforms. If you need something that's bare metal, we can run on bare metal. If you need something that's in a container, we can run in a container. We have cloud load balancers. So when we talk about cloud, in this case, I'm talking about public cloud environments. So I have Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure. You can bring your own license into those clouds, and it's also available in the marketplace. So you can go directly to those cloud marketplaces, find the Kemp technology solution, and just add it to your environment quickly and easily. And of course, we have hardware versions of our load balancers. Excuse me. We have hardware versions of our load balancers where you can use the hardware to take advantage of higher performance requirements because we have customized not the silicon, but the hardware design and platform to really make it more cost effective for you. And of course, if you're interested in learning a little more, or if you might have a small case in your lab or other situation where you have a small website, we also offer a free version of our load balancer. If you go to freeloadbalancer.com, you can download a fully functioning version of the Kemp Load Balancing technology. And the primary limit is it's limited to 20 megabits per second throughput for the small environments such as your lab or a small website that you're running. So certainly take advantage of that as well. Flexible licensing, a little more detail. Of course, we give you, I say, of course, the perpetual license. That concept of I'm buying a license and I get it for the rest of my life and I only have to pay for support for it. If I want support, and hopefully I do. And that license is usually good for a certain amount of throughput in general, like a 3 gig license, a 5 gig license, a 10 gig license, unlimited license. Then we also have pooled licensing. I'll jump to the bottom here a little bit. Pooled licensing where I can buy a certain amount of capacity and now I can divvy out that capacity in different size instances. I can buy 100 gigs of capacity and then I can farm it out in 3, 5, 10 gig or 500 meg instances all over the place as long as my total consumption or license is up to that capability. We have subscription-based licensing also where I can pay monthly or annually, support included, and I just maintain that similar to what I would say a car lease, where I get the access to it as long as I pay for that subscription. And this metered licensing is very cool. Metered licensing is something that's fairly unique to Kemp. And I believe it's ultimately going to be a game changer in the industry because we see it in the public, partially in the public cloud environments, where you're paying for only what you consume. This is like the electric meter on the side of the house, where I'm running the electric meter, or the power company is actually running the electric meter. And inside my house, I have all these different outlets and breakers and things and all these different devices. Some of my devices are running 24/7. Some of them only run a certain part of the time. Some of them I can flip on and off with a switch. Some use a lot of power, some use a little power. But you know what? The power company doesn't care. They don't care if I add more devices because I have this party going on in my house and I need to plug in a lot of things and then I unplug them later at the end of the night. All they care about is how much electricity I'm consuming. That's what this metered licensing is. Metered licensing is the concept of me only paying for the load balancing consumption, not for the instances. So meter licensing allows me to deploy unlimited number of load balancers anywhere and everywhere that I want. I don't pay for them unless they're actually load balancing traffic, and I'll only pay for the traffic that they're load balancing. It is a very efficient concept if you have a model that makes sense to move to meter licensing. It is a great idea. So my key takeaways with this presentation, with this discussion that we're having here, is that number one, Kemp supports load balancing and offers full features. Of course, F5 has a very full feature product portfolio as well, and they support all these full features and more. I mean, again, technically they can do anything they want with iRules. But along the same lines, F5 focuses on a lot more than just load balancing. They're really positioning the company and product portfolio to do a lot more than this core load balancing that we're talking about. And we really need to understand and adjust for that. Kemp is focusing on your load balancing need. We understand that your core competency and requirements are for that server load balancing, that global server load balancing requirement. We can do other things as well. So we can support the edge authentication and we can support the web application firewall capabilities. But ultimately, we know that the primary driver for a lot of these installations and projects is that core load balancing functionality. And to be able to do that, it needs to be simple. We understand that load balancing is a niche technology. It's not networking. Traditionally, I was a layer 3, layer 4, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 switching routing engineer. I knew my OSPF, my RIP version 2. I knew my spanning tree, my BGP. And then on the other side of the fence, we have the application developers that know the coding, that know the C, C++, the PHP, the Cold Fusion, the Node.js, JavaScript. Load balancing is somewhere in between. It is not networking, it is not application, it is a hybrid of the two. It is understanding the application at the network layer. So it is a niche technology. So because it's a niche technology that really brings these two worlds together that usually don't come together, it needs to be simple. It needs to be easy to configure, easy to manage. And F5's products, because of the way they are built, they're complicated. They're very complicated to configure. They're very complicated to manage operationally and to troubleshoot. So it is very hard for you to see how to manage and operate that F5 product on a regular basis because of that complexity that they built in. There's a lot of training and expertise that you need to invest into your team to get that value. So ultimately, that also means that Kemp is going to deliver a better value for your money. Kemp is going to deliver the value for your money because it is a lower cost CapEx for the initial price, as we saw in the slide. Anywhere from a third to maybe 1/10, 1/8 the price of an F5 solution, as well as operationally, because I don't need to invest in the expertise, the training, excuse me, and I get a better operational ease of use for that total cost of ownership. F5's products, again, are going to be a lot more expensive. And again, it's going to require a lot more training and expertise to manage and deal with overall. And last, Kemp has top customer ratings, and these are validated by a third party, such as Gartner Peer Insights. So these are not like Yelp reviews where I can pay someone or just tell someone to go and put this post up there and now it's there for the world to see. Gartner actually, the third-party analyst firm, actually validates the reviews to make sure it comes from the customer and is completely valid. And we have our world-class support organization. So we have our top-of-the-line support engineers supporting the solution, being the first line of support when you contact them, and as a global organization. We have support engineers based in New York, based in Ireland, and Singapore for that global coverage. F5 is not the top-rated load balancer in Gartner Peer Insights. There's a reason. You'll see that their ratings will show that they're a good product, they're a full-featured product, but there's complexity and there's cost associated with it. And this is not necessarily what they're looking for. Small reminder, don't forget, if you have questions, and I saw one come in that you want us to, that you have after this presentation, there will be a Q&A, and please insert your questions in the Q&A section. So finally, don't use the F word, choose Kemp. We have trial software available. Go to kemp.ax/try, and you can download trial software. These trial options you can see on the right-hand side, where you can download the virtual software. This virtual software can be for virtual images for various hypervisors, as well as for bring your own license within the cloud environments. And you can see we have cloud options also. Again, You can do trial versions of the software through the cloud marketplaces. So Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, VMware vCloud, you can use their marketplaces and systems to trial our software. And of course, you can certainly contact us to do a trial of the hardware as well. So we have trial options available for you, no cost to you, to see and understand how easy it is. And during that trial period, there's going to be full support behind the solution as well. So you don't have to learn everything or figure everything out from scratch. We don't expect you to. We will have our support organization working with you to understand how to get the trial up and running and make it successful. If you want to hear or read about more customers and why they switched from F5 to Kemp, go to the website kemp.ax/binge/F5. And then we have some customer testimonials for you to understand why F5 was not necessarily the right choice and they decided to go to a Kemp solution. Whether it's because they needed to move from legacy hardware to cloud environments, or because there was a cost or complexity issue that they were running into and it made sense for them to migrate. And of course, if you have any further questions or additional things as you go through your process of looking at and evaluating and selecting load balancing technologies, you're more than happy to contact us at sales@kemp.ax. So at this point, I'm going to look at the questions that we have. And I do have one question. Does Kemp support context like VS on F5? So when you say VS, I'm assuming you're talking about virtual server. So the context like a VS or the virtual servers, so the VIP capability for the load balancing functionality. So when you have the VS, when you have the virtual servers on the load balancer, and then you create the pool of real servers behind them, absolutely. So basically, any some capability that you need in terms of the load balancing functionality, in terms of defining the virtual systems, defining the pools of servers and application resources on the back end, you're going to find a very similar functionality or identical functionality, just obviously different in the way it's configured. And this is true for a lot of advanced features as well. So for load balancing algorithms and health checks, for doing your status code health checks, we're doing for HTTP status codes or SMTP status code 200 or 404 or 503, or doing custom health checks to look for a specific test page and look for a proper response from that test page to say, yes, I understand all the backend components are healthy. And of course, algorithms in terms of round robin connections or least connections or some sort of weighted or some sort of hashing to do the distribution across servers. All of that functionality that you use within the F5 product, you're going to find to be available in the Kemp product as well. So there's going to be very much a parity capability in terms of functionality on the technical level between F5 and Kemp. Hopefully that answers that question. And let me just also say that the concept of load balancing has been around for a while, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, but it's never been more important in today's world. Again, talking about this digital transformation, this conversion and migration to this software-defined, whatever you want to call it, software-defined data center, software-defined network, software-defined application services, moving to the cloud, whether it's private cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud, where we have this virtualization. Load balancing is a critical technology to enable those pieces. And what we're finding is that businesses are migrating or evolving to these environments and architectures, not because they're going to save money. Maybe at the beginning we were thinking, oh, I'm going to save money because I'm going to the cloud, and I'm not going to have to own and manage my infrastructure anymore. But really and truly what we found out is that we're not saving money going to the cloud. There's other complexities and costs associated with it, actually makes it usually more expensive. But what we're doing is we're trying to get that agility and elasticity. So that flexibility and that agility and elasticity within the cloud, within these virtual environments is really designed on this core load balancing technology, that server load balancing, that global server load balancing to give us that abstraction, that reverse proxy technology for load balancing within these environments. And ultimately, because of that, it is the core load balancing that we're looking for, that we as an IT industry are looking for to enable that functionality and not necessarily all these other components and complexity. We want to try to keep things as simple as possible. Cloud and virtualization is complex already. So keeping these other pieces simple to be able to accomplish this is essential. So hopefully this has been a useful presentation. Hopefully we gave you some good insights and understanding of why you don't want to use the F word, reasons why they may not be F5 networks, may not be the best solution for your project and for your environment, and why you really need to look at the other alternatives when you are selecting or going through the process of selecting core load balancing technologies and solutions. So I appreciate you spending the time to listen to us and to participate in this webinar. And hopefully we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you at a future time or at another webinar. Thank you very much and have a great day, everybody.